So today's topic is how to bring projects that are in trouble back on track, because we all know that projects and programs never have any problems, and everything sets out on a perfect path, and there is never any hiccups in our road to produce the perfect project. None of us have ever experienced that or know anyone who's experienced that. But before we do this one, I'd like to do a quick exercise with you guys. So if I could invite you to breathe with me for a moment. And if you want to follow my instructions, if you just put your arms up like this in front of your face, you might need a little gap so you can see the screen. Otherwise, you'll just be standing with your arms in front of your face. And I want you to breathe in and open your arms like this. And then breathe out in 3 short breaths. Excellent. And again, in, out in 3. 2 more, 1 more. Out. And the last one, out. So excellent. Thank you for that. That was very entertaining. And now I know that you've got oxygen in your body and your brain, so you can pay even more attention. So thank you for that. And I guess here's the first tip that we have. When things go off track, breathe. So that can be our first takeaway from today's little session. Now, we've got a few people who are talking today. We've got 3 people who are going to help us out. And let me introduce them, just so you know who they are. And they're really quite amazing people. So I just want to help you understand who they are. So the first one I've got is Antoinette. Antoinette is an enterprise coach. She's a delivery leader. She's a chapter lead. She's an all-round program and project guru. She spent about 16 years in leading organizational and technology change for some of Australia and New Zealand's biggest brands. In a past life, Antoinette helped teach the University of Auckland's Masters in Engineering Project Management and has mentored a whole heap of postgrad students. She's also a senior member of an enterprise PMO that won the PMI New Zealand PMO of the Year. So basically, Antoinette is the one that you wheel in when programs and projects go off the rails. So it'll be great to hear what she's got to say. Also, we have David Morris. Now, David's an EPiC coach and instructor in everything lean and agile. He focuses on delivery and change. He's got nearly 40 years experience, and I double-checked that number there. It is actually 40 years. He said that I could say that. Starting with software delivery, but he's always focused on uplifting the capabilities of his clients and his team and himself. He's a second-generation author. Not many of us can say that. He collaborated with his father on a number of books before launching out on his own with Scrum and Easy Steps, and then Agile Project Management in Easy Steps, now on its 3rd edition. And who doesn't like Easy Steps? So he's also a guest lecturer for Agile Project Management at the University of Auckland. He's worked in several organizations to align PMO and coaching teams and shift from formal project program management to adaptive value management. So hopefully we can tap into some of his wisdom here and maybe even buy the book. And last but not least, we have the wonderful Grant. Now, Grant's an enterprise coach as well. He's a delivery specialist. He's had decades of leading strategic initiatives, including business and operating model transformation, digital transformation, new business initiatives, and delivery of large technology and organizational change programs. So he's led several corporate and privately funded startup ventures, in each case involving development of new technologies and products and services. Now, prior to EPiC, Grant co-founded a facilities management business leveraging homegrown tech to create competitive advantage, and eventually sold the business to a global private equity firm. So yay, Grant. He also led the Optus Sport program to build and launch new sports TV, streaming and broadcasting businesses adjacent to the telco services. So he's been around the traps. And if anyone can get our projects, our programs back on track, it's these guys. So we'll hear from those in just a moment. But before we hear from them, I'd like to hear from you. So there are many things that we could talk about, but we want to hear what you want to talk about. And the way we want to do that is to get you to use Menti. So if you can scan the QR code or go to menti.com and type in the number 55569400, I'm going to give you about a minute and a half to read through those 9 different areas. And if you could vote on your favorite ones, vote on your favorite 3. What are the 3 things you'd like us to talk about today? And then we'll go through those. And then we'll, only 3, that's right, only 3. And we'll see where you guys would like to have adventure today. So again, just go to Mentimeter, type in, what did I say it was? I said it was 555-69400. 555-69400. You'll get a screen that looks a little bit like this. You might have to scroll down if it goes off your screen and just drag the ones up that you'd like to see. And while you're doing that, I'm going to play music for a little bit. All right, I think we're getting there. I can't see many shift at the top of the leaderboard, so I think we're pretty much locked in. Thank you all for that. So the subjects that we're going to be talking about today are, he says in his best pirate voice, lack of leadership and direction, slow decision-making, and lack of planning roadmap. So let's go back to our little Miro board over here. We love Miro. I'm going to paste this here so we can have a little reminder of what we're going to be doing next. And let's go through these one at a time. So we're going to spend a few minutes with the team unpacking what these are. They're going to share a couple of tips, and we're going to take any questions at the same time. So if you keep your Menti open, feel free to type any questions that you would like to ask about this particular subject in the Menti. We'll go through those and as we go through each of the questions, and then we'll see what we can do to answer your questions. So first of all, we said lack of leadership and direction. So where is that over here? Oh, there we go, lack of leadership or direction. All right, Antoinette and co.
Hey.
Help us understand what this is all about.
Awesome, thanks Darren. Hey everyone, welcome. So just before we start, let's just take a step back and set the scene. Picture this, it's a multi-million-dollar, multi-year program. It's in trouble. It's been running for 18 months, no value's been delivered, there's no approved business case, it's been running on hundreds of thousands of dollars of seed funding requests. There's a drop-dead go-live date in place, it's looming in 5 weeks' time. There is no move on this. Some senior leaders have promised the senior stakeholders and they don't want to move the date. No delivery has even been started. There's no design, there's no awareness about what needs to be done. Scope's not clear, there's no vision, there's no roadmap forward, no clarity. Everyone's unhappy, everyone. Relationships have completely broken down between some of the team and key stakeholders. The program needs to be brought back on track. The sponsors and the Enterprise Program Management Office have brought us in to do just that. It's chaotic. So where do we start? First, breathe. Before we do anything else, we know we're going to have to be hitting the ground running. We're going to have to assess the situation, deal with some priority people issues and pain points. So step one, ensure your role is communicated clearly when you first come in, and then gain intel. Gain intel from the people bringing you in, from the team, from governance, from stakeholders, running retrospectives where you can for learning, and reviewing any of the key documents that might already exist. Step two, make recommendations and socialize to seek agreement. Outline any costs, budget and changes, time, people changes and resource needs. Seek agreement or approval as you need to. And step three, make the change. We are action orientated. So we've identified our number one problem. Let's take a closer look. Lack of leadership or direction. So what's going on here? Typically, when we unpack a little bit, it's leaders who aren't engaging. It can be a lot of causes here. They might be too busy. They might consider a low priority. They're not delegating well. They're not clear about where we need to be heading, so are not articulating it. They may just expect people to just know, or they may not understand their role in relation to the program or project. They know they may be sponsors or owners who are just across too many things, so they're deprioritizing, and they may not even be being engaged with in the right ways. It will cause alarm bells for me personally if I hear that sponsors, business owners, senior stakeholders are too busy and haven't been engaged with in terms of, with the project team at all. It's a common example that I can see, and we quite often see it in real time, like meetings are booked, but leaders aren't able to show because they've got other priorities. So it can go on and cause quite a bit of concern. It's a high risk that will cause other problems. It's impactful, it will cause frustration with the team, it'll likely slow decisions, we'll likely see that we're burning through time and money, There's poor stakeholder engagement and a lack of confidence, and definitely a lack of clarity. So what can we do here? Well, there's a few steps that we can do. So step one, we really need a clear, compelling vision. We need to, if one isn't there, we need to help establish one. So often we can use something we call the elevator pitch, which is sort of identifies who we're trying to design or deliver for, what's needed, what the product is, what it provides, and importantly, just helps us provide some clarity to get that nice, clear, succinct vision statement. A compelling vision statement will go a long way to creating clarity. And it's also a really great motivator. So it's a nice, clear thing about where we're heading. So if one doesn't exist, we do have to help create it. It does definitely make the case of we need our decision makers to be involved in this. So we need to find a way to engage them. So step two, engage our leaders. Be clear on their role and how we'll work together. We need to understand the direction, letting them know we need to understand the direction and providing leaders the opportunity to share their views of the direction. Facilitate decisions where you need, sessions where you need to. If you're not comfortable facilitating, sort of get additional support to do that, because sometimes you need a sort of step-by-step guide, a really well-facilitated session to get that clear direction out. And so it just enables people to contribute. And step three, we can help lift governance capability and lead by example. So be clear if any decisions that need to be made and when they need to be made. People generally want to contribute in a significant and meaningful way. Make a decision register and make it visible so that you know and you can be clear about when those decisions are needed, and definitely socialize it consistently. I'd love to hear from Grant in terms of one of our teammates around, what things have you seen here, Grant, that can help?
Well, I guess lack of leadership can be subtle or quite obvious, and it can be from within the program, or it can be from the actual stakeholders. So, I'd say if you're running a program and that program is defined around what you're delivering, but the why is not clear, that's a red flag to me. And I would say bringing stakeholders in to actually talk to the team and explain the why and create that sense of purpose really makes it easier for a program leader to step in and continue that leadership. But you really need the owners of the program itself telling their story.
Absolutely.
Nice. Shall we see if there's any questions? Is now a good time?
Yeah, absolutely.
Time. All right, we've got one question here. Feel free to type in others. We don't have to, but the question that we have here is: leaders don't want to talk to me. My commiseration to whoever wrote this. They think it's a waste of their time. What's a recommended approach in that situation?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. And I'll also, look, that is the most difficult, right? There's probably not an awareness. They've clearly deprioritized it. So what you can do is they really need to understand what the impact is. So whatever way you can get either through another leader to speak to those leaders, or through if they've got EAs, but regardless, they need to understand the impact. So is it that they've deprioritized and they don't want to continue with what's being worked on? It's whatever way you can get in front of them. I think when we say engage, it sounds really simple. When people are like, just, hey, there's no room in their diary, they're not getting back to you, all of those things. Is there anybody else that you can go to help that? Or whatever mechanism of communication that you have. If it is, look, it's we have to do it in a nice way, but it really is a risk if it's going to be starting to impact and we're going to start burning through time and money around it. Tim, anything else you want to add here?
Yeah, sometimes I've encountered this, and it's been because some people find themselves in a leadership position but are not comfortable or unable to articulate the vision. And sometimes it's just a little bit of a prompt or a little bit of guidance in just creating that story, being able to do that storytelling to communicate the vision and kind of help motivate or align people. So what I've found sometimes is sharing some form of storytelling template to help people understand what are some key elements to put into a story, and then just get comfortable with that. And I've found some leaders have really benefited from that.
Awesome.
And I'd add, if you're encountering that, then that is going to be a problem all the way through. It has to be dealt with now. Sometimes you just have to take that head on and force a conversation, no matter how uncomfortable it is.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. We've got about 2 minutes left. Let's deal with these other questions. So the next one is, how would you make a decision register visible in our digital world?
I'm happy to respond to how I'm doing that right now in terms of projects and programs. Look, Miro boards are great in providing access to those in terms of a decision register. So making that really, really visible on the screen so we can track it. Also, just through governance, the governance meetings of project control groups or steering committees, it's very much front of mind. Decisions are hugely impactful. We need them by certain times, so we're really clear around. We'll talk. I think it's actually number 2, actually, in terms of slow decision making. So we're going to go into that in a bit more detail so shortly as well. So I'll give a chance for some of my other teams to just add things there.
Great, David. Do you feel the need to pipe up?
Sorry?
I'm just checking whether you guys want to add anything to that, or are you happy for us to move on?
Oh, sorry, I couldn't hear for a second.
It's okay.
Yeah.
So I've got to deal with that one in just a moment, Antoinette. Then let's go to a third and final question before we get to the next topic. So our last question is, what if leaders don't have the capability, leader in position and name only, because this never happens? What's our advice?
Yeah, to build that capability. Look, one of the ways in which we can do it, when we are engaging initially with leaders around the role, the best thing to do is actually, as part of their governance role, is to talk about their role and what expectations there might be and make sure that they're comfortable with that. So you can talk about it in relation to what you're working on, unless you're the leader, and to lead by example. But I don't have the capability. Yeah, ideally, it might be just in particular areas. We can help build that capability, even if we're in different roles, around being really clear what our expectations are, at least, and supporting them to do that. And if there's other mechanisms that can help support that, in the past we've actually offered governance masterclasses to help grow capability in governance leaders, so that they can come into those sponsors and business owner roles and just be clear about what's expected of them and how they would work and support program and project managers and team as well.
Anything to add, guys?
Yeah, I've found several times that's a great opportunity, actually, to really partner up with them if they're uncertain. And you have a great relationship and they trust you to represent them and to guide and steer them. It's a great opportunity. Presuming you know what needs to be done and can step into that space.
Yeah. Absolutely. Anything you want to add, David?
If I'd realised this question was coming up, I would have held back my response to the first question. If their capability is in how to communicate, then that's what I said earlier would still hold true here. That idea of the storytelling canvas, just to help people articulate it. They've got to have the vision in the first place, but sometimes it's just putting it into words.
Nice. Awesome. Well, thank you, guys. Here into problem number 1. One of the things which came out as I was hearing you guys speak was, if the leaders aren't engaging, then they probably don't see the value to them in engaging, or the value in what they need to engage with. So as long as they can have that story that you guys were saying, and as long as they're attached to it and find value in it, then they'll become more active leaders. So let us go to what our next one is. The next one on our list was slow decision making. Well, let's find where that one is. Oh, there we go. It's right up there. So slow decision making. Now I'm just going to quickly click across here. Oh, there's another question there. Don't worry, we'll cover that at the end if we have time. So if you'd like to write any questions you've got for the gang on this topic, feel free to type them into Menti now. But otherwise, Antoinette, slow decision-making.
Oh, decision-making. Thank you, Darren. Hey, look, team, this is a really tricky one. And in fact, we saw that through the questions in the first one. It creates waste. It will burn through time and money, and it is painful. So let's have a little look. What's typically going on here? Someone's not making decisions. Maybe they don't know that they need to make decisions. Maybe there's too many decision makers, and quite often there is. Maybe they're not being brought together to make the decision. Or what is really common, and we sort of have touched on, is that they're not prioritizing the decision in a timely enough manner, or maybe they just don't realize the impact of the time. I've seen it slow a program in the tens of millions of dollars to a trickle. I wasn't leading it, but I was involved in it. I've seen it, slow decision making absolutely impact, and my first inclination though is to avoid it. It can be a risk, and if it needs to be, raise it as a risk. And a project I just led for a client, we needed to make some really complex decisions around, impacting revenue, around margin and price and so on. So that was to enable logic that our data scientists would build into the system. So it's all around machine learning. We had a really limited runway to make these decisions in time and able to get the delivery through. So to avoid this, we were really clear up front about what the decisions were. We were also really clear about who could make them, and we validated that. And then when they were needed by, we built this into a stakeholder engagement plan, which is something I absolutely live by. We're really clear about who we need to engage with, who our audience is, what the message is, what the channel, all of those things, and who's best to deliver the message and when. And we made it very visible on our decision register. So as I sort of mentioned, in this case, we had it on a Miro board, and we also had it really clearly as part of our governance engagement. So, and those people that needed to be involved in the decisions, because it was a lot of stakeholders. There was, commercial finance and other a number of other business teams senior leaders had to be involved. So big decisions. So then we planned and we engaged with them. So my first inclination is avoid it. It's something that can be just so impactful. However, I'll move to some steps around what we can do. So ideally, step one is that we do establish it as part of the governance. So ideally, we like to be really clear up front who gets to make which decisions on what, where that needs to be multiple decision makers. Be clear that this is a risk, right? So ideally, we want to mitigate it. So the more people involved in the decision, the longer it's going to take. That's just a fact. So just creating the awareness around that. And be mindful of what lead times that you might have. So you constantly need to be planning for it, thinking ahead in terms of the length of time that it might take in terms of trying to mitigate it. But walking into where it's already a problem, we need to identify the bottlenecks, right? So we need to try and understand the root causes of what's slowing it down, because it may not be immediately obvious. So there's a technique that there's lots of problem solving techniques, but there's a really simple one called the 5 whys problem solving technique. So we just keep asking, why a number of times to get right down to the root cause. For example, decisions are not being made. Why? Because we can't meet with our sponsor. Why? Because they're too busy. Why? Because they're not prioritizing it. Why? Because they don't realize the impact. Why? Because we haven't communicated it. So we get right down to those, what that root cause is, so therefore we can now respond. So in step 3, look, it's big, but where we can, we need to streamline as much of the decision-making as we can, put as much of the decision-making with the team as we can, as possible, be really clear on levels of decision, where we need to escalate decisions, and try to minimize the number of decision-makers wherever we can. So someone has to have the captain's call at the end of the day. So if we are delayed, we've got a place to go to. As soon as we decide by committee, we slow things down. So you can try and set response times. We need to make this in 2 weeks, and we clear, or we risk the project, or we risk delivery, or we'll start burning through time and money. So within this as well, we need to educate. We need to educate our governance groups on the decision approach and the need for speed. Ideally, they're inputting, into it, and the why. So if we've had previous pain in the space, share that. This is why we've learned from this. This is what we've learned, and now we just want to make things better. And be clear about what their role in it is. So if we can facilitate things well, around making decisions easier. I know when I've walked into that, that multi-million-dollar problem program where decisions hadn't been made, it was actually a case of needing to bring those decision makers together in a room with a facilitated session to help them to make those decisions. So that's one of those things that we were clear about what the outcome of what we needed to achieve, whatever information we had going in there, because it was in this case by committee, very large committee. And some large committees, they do like, traditionally they might like other ways they like to see options and recommendations, and sometimes in a memo format that they might need in a week or two in advance so they can digest it and make decisions. We work around those constraints as we can. But the final step is we do need to track it. We track it in a decisions register. We make it visible, and we watch for any decisions that are delaying our delivery, and we create an action plan to address. So we try to be as vocal as we can about that in a really nice way. It should be reflected in our risks. But yeah, I'd love to hear from the team. Right.
Yeah, this is a problem you see often. I was dealing with this at a client just recently. It actually wasn't a troubled project, but it was an anticipated problem for a new project. Very, very common. Everybody needs to be involved in decisions. It was a known problem. So we actually started off up front with racing and doing that streamlining you were talking about, Antoinette, and had conversation after conversation with all stakeholders and decision makers, and trying to peel back who was absolutely necessary to make decisions and who was empowered, and trying to get those people close to the day-to-day delivery team. And there were some awkward conversations because everybody thought that they should be a decision maker. But at the end of the day, what we really found was there was very few decisions that really needed to be made by a committee, and the vast majority could in fact be made by people close to the program. And when you think about hundreds and hundreds of decisions across a piece of work, that makes a big difference.
Win-win.
Nice. Anything there, David?
Yeah, I think as project managers or in other roles, kind of where we're kind of leading in delivery, we've got the opportunity to role model this. Sometimes I've seen this as a challenge where the ideal is we want teams to be involved in some of that decision making, and that's a good idea to shift some of the decision making to the team if we've got autonomy in the team. But often when we're starting up a project, there's a long lag before we get the team established. So having the team established and getting them involved earlier can help with that for sure. And I think just making the decisions that need to be made visible. I think Antoinette, you talked about that, but also making it clear what the impact of a delay in a response is going to be. So yeah, that's what I've seen to be effective.
Nice, thanks, guys. Let's go to the questions. See if anyone's put anything up here. Here we go. We have a question. Have you seen decentralized decision making in big organizations? And if yes, what was it like? Kind of already touched on it a little bit, but if you want to double down on the answer, that'd be great.
Yeah, absolutely. We have. It's definitely in organisations that want to try and get decision making as close to the team. I've seen it work really, really well. When again, there's that really clear clarity at what point do decisions need to be escalated up. So who needs to be involved in them? Grant touched on, when it got down to it, actually, when you're talking about stakeholders, sometimes those stakeholder community groups can be really large, but actually who gets to make the decisions and being really clear on that. When we get decisions down to a level where the team, as long as it's not going to, as long as within its delegated financial authority, it's not going to cost any more money, it might be clear that actually the team just gets to make that call. And I've seen that, personally seen that work really, really well in large organizations where that's been the mentality. Team, anything else want to add here?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we spend a lot of our time trying to make that possible. So have seen it. seen it in some organizations that people might be quite surprised about, actually. But I'd say that there's one thing that it's always like, and that is the clarity of purpose is clear. You can't have decentralized decision making without alignment and a clear understanding of the purpose, and therefore the scope of decisions that you're able to take.
Thank you. Anything you want to add there, David? Are you happy?
No, I can't really add much to that.
That's right.
That's awesome.
We do like a good why, don't we? A why is very motivating. And there's actually one more question here we've got, which is any advice for overcoming the collective need to have perfect information in order to make a decision? Oh, that's a good one.
Oh yeah, if I can come back on that one, as I didn't have anything to add to the last one. So I think there's a common cliche that perfection is the enemy of progress, and I think if you spend ages, whether it's in analysis design or decision making, trying to come up with the perfect solution, then you just won't make a step forward. So I think sometimes it's the better route is to make a decision and to try out part of that and try it on for size, if you like. And then if you've got short feedback loops, if you're able to see what the impact of that is very quickly and adapt again if it wasn't quite the right response, then that's an ideal approach. It helps keep forward momentum and yeah, tries to unblock the decision-making process.
Nice.
Yeah.
Thanks, guys. Anything else you want to add before we move on to our final topic?
Just as, you know, in terms of a leadership capability, actually leaders, we often have to make decisions with, you know, not enough information, make it quite quickly. It is a skill and a muscle that it needs to be developed. It's, you know, in very high, there's a sense of quite a high risk. There'll be a tendency to delay and not want to make those decisions. I think it's, as you know, Grant touched on, it's about making sure that the impact of that delay is clear, to try and move the mindset, and to try and just, if we can, just try and build the leadership capability around going, you know, sometimes we have to make calls with just not enough information. We try to find as much as we can, and we just make the best that we can. And as David said, you know, at least try and make a decision so that we can move forward.
Just before we move on, Antoinette, can I just add on that on that last question?
Absolutely.
That is so frustrating sometimes, but one little tip might be to try, don't accept no decision, force them to make a decision, not to make a decision.
Oh, nice.
Put the onus back on them.
Always
Are we
learning from
agreeing that we're not going to make a decision? Is that the decision?
Yeah.
Nice. So do Grant and go meta on it. I think that's really cool. So the tips to take away from here, why is not a dirty word. Understanding the impact of no decision is a real motivating factor, or as Grant says, go meta. Let's go to our final topic for today. I'll go down to our little areas. The third one we had was lack of planning / roadmap. Now, where was that one? Lack of planning / roadmap. Yeah, we go right in the middle. All right, should we unpack this one a little bit?
Thank you.
I'll move the questions on in case you've got any other questions you'd like to lob about this particular topic.
Is it appropriate for a wee planning joke? I'm going to try my best. How do you organize a party in space? You plan it.
Oh, geez.
Oh no, I can see everyone going, oh no.
That's so bad. And
Okay,
I will
won't.
use it.
Yeah, I'm not. Okay, maybe I shouldn't be doing stand-up, but I've probably done quite a lot of planning. Okay, so let's unpick a little bit, team. What's happening here? So planning, it's a core program and project skill. It's needed in delivery. And I should also clarify too that the tips that we're giving today and things, it's regardless of whether it's a program, a project, any other delivery element. We still have to do the basics well, in terms of, project management. We still have to, or leading delivery, we still have to plan, we still have to manage scope, we still have to manage time, risks and issues, the dollars, we still have to, help lead people and support, making sure it's got the right resourcing and those types of things. So we need to make sure that we are still tracking towards the outcomes and desired goals to deliver value. Is it a lack of plan, or is it the lack of a current plan? So, was it a sort of, an MS project plan that was done once and then never refreshed because it's just administratively, it's just a nightmare and it just got out of control. Regardless of what it is, if there isn't one and you're on the outside, ask for it. If not, if we need to create it. So some steps here that we can do to do that. Step one is, if we're coming in, we need to engage our team to understand the work and sequence it. So, getting it out, getting it visible, using, ideally, if we are working remotely, we're using something like a Miro board or a mural board. If we are in the room, then we've got Post-it notes or we're up around a whiteboard. We are getting what's in people's heads out and sequencing it. Step two is something I absolutely live by. Create a living roadmap. A roadmap that is always on, which means we are constantly, refreshing it over time. I typically like to have one that, captures goals across a timeline. I typically will prefer monthly, aligned to quarters and aligned to financial years if we multi-financial year. And then, within the breakdown of that work, a roadmap is really great in terms of something that's digestible. As a team, we might have another board somewhere else that's got, visual work around. It could be in sprints, it could be in iteration, but it's basically, the breakdown of the work within a shorter time frame. We need to, our team knows best how to get the how, right? So that's where we want to be clear, and we don't want to sort of create so much information in one place that people can't digest it. I also like to include things like leave and public holidays so we can understand capacity. And if we're aligning those goals to the month, then we've got probably a pretty clear outcome. And then by stream so that, again, it's easily digestible. It's not always easy, but we do need to try and lift ourselves up to see the bigger picture. So think in terms of horizons. It could be the immediate week, it could be a sprint, it could be a month, it could be 3 months, 6 months, 1 year, 2 year, whatever the right horizon is, but lift ourselves up and sort of look ahead. We won't know exactly how this will look, but if we're thinking ahead, it definitely helps us to stay future focused. And the faster we can get a view around the steps that we need to do to achieve the outcome, the better. So it's definitely a priority activity. As we deliver and achieve milestones, one thing that I've learned is our visual cues are, an ability to celebrate wins. Our visual cues, I turn things green personally, as like green for done as we go, so we can see the work we've done, and then we're focused on what's coming up, and we're constantly refreshing it. And step three, we get feedback. As we're creating the roadmap, we're getting feedback from stakeholders, from team. We adjust it, adapt it, and we make it visible and transparent. So if you're at remote working teams, you've got it on a Miro board. If you're in the office, you've got it really handy and close, and it's front of mind, and it's constantly being refreshed. As you share it, let people know that it's living. Okay, because we always get people go, well, we've got a plan. Why haven't we met the plan? The thing is that things change over time. So it needs to be constantly updated and refreshed, or at least monitored. We're just checking how we're tracking. We're turning things green because we're achieving them, including our goals. Yes. We do respond to change over following a plan. So, in terms of the value of the Agile Manifesto, we all need to be able to respond to change over following a plan. So again, our roadmap is living. It may also need to be in a few formats depending on the audience. So, while now have had remote teams, so I've had a Miro, very visible, very front of mind, with all of our governance and stakeholders being able to have access to that. But also, when it comes to the governance groups, sometimes it's a one-page PowerPoint slide or whatever is the right format. That's sort of a drill down, view. So we do adapt it for the audience as well. Just whatever tools, it's just important to understand where we're heading and being able to articulate that to others. Absolutely crucial. David, something you'd like to add here?
Yeah, it's interesting whether you, depending on who you read, either Benjamin Franklin or Winston Churchill said, failing to plan is planning to fail. So having a plan is important, but yeah, it's about not having everything detailed up front, which we traditionally would have done. And in the late 90s, I was working at the UK Post Office, or Royal Mail as it was then, And our challenge was we were running with Scrum and a bunch of other stuff at the time. And we just got going. We thought this is a wild new frontier. We can just get progress, and it was wonderful. And we just found that we were meandering all over the place. And it was good to come back to some of those basics and to say, actually, no, we do need a plan, but it's a high level plan. This idea of the roadmap, having those sticks in the sand on a quarterly basis or whatever it is, just helps give us that direction. And I think that's what we were missing. So if you ever feel something is meandering and lacking direction, having some high level visibility of direction is important without getting bogged down in doing too much detailed planning up front. Yeah.
Thanks, David. And Grant.
I could talk about this all afternoon, because you see this so often. And just remembering that we're in the context of a program or a project that's already in trouble by the time we get involved for the purposes of this conversation. This is surprisingly often. You will always see this, and it is often in combination with a whole bunch of other things on that problem list. But interestingly, I think sometimes there's heaps and heaps of plans, but not enough planning that's going on. It's often a lack of planning doesn't necessarily mean a lack of plans. Quite often there's heaps of plans, it's the planning that's missing. The roadmap view can really help things. I think that it's quite different. That can be different depending on the situation you're in, but the ability to get a helicopter view and see how the major goals that you're pursuing link together is key. It's often hard when if you first come into a program that's already in trouble and where this is a problem. You're trying to deal with, you've got alligators everywhere, you're trying to deal with fixing all sorts of things at once, you don't yet understand what's going on. There's an absence of a plan, everyone wants a plan, they want to see a roadmap, and you don't know enough yet to create it. That's the challenge. But it doesn't have to be because of what you were saying about the living roadmap. You can just start with what you know and just start building out and evolving it, and as you learn. And I think the most important thing about the roadmap isn't the roadmap itself, it's that you're always talking to it, you're always interacting around it. That's what leads your conversations with your stakeholders and your team and so forth. And quite quickly, you'll understand enough to be able to represent that whole initiative fairly well on your roadmap.
Nice. Thanks, guys. Let's see if there's any questions. So we're getting close to our time. Oh, here we go. We've got a question. The question is, what other planning tools do you consider are the best in a collaborative environment aside from Miro, especially in terms of playback in getting buy-in from the stakeholder, crews, and squads?
Great question. I'll start, and I'll definitely, team, if you want to add something else. Yeah, look, in terms of planning tools, I know I talked about Miro a little bit, quite a lot, but there's other tools that can, as long as it can show us a roadmap, tools like Jira, for example. There's Asana. There are other tools that do enable that planning view. Tim, anything else you want to add here in terms of those? If we've got, and I think actually you're talking about sort of like getting buy-in from sort of wider stakeholder crews and squads. Sort of a PowerPoint.
No, I'd echo what you're saying. Hopefully most backlog management tools these days have the ability to draw up several layers to show some direction over a period of time built into the tool so that you can drill down. And I think if you're able to do that, answering questions with stakeholders becomes a lot easier as well. So yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I haven't got anything to add really. I love the mural boards as a way of collaborating. Well, yeah, I don't have anything to add to that.
Yeah.
Thank you, guys. That's all the questions I got for this time, and we're running close to time. If I was to get on the bandwagon with David's quoting of famous people from World War II, I think it was General MacArthur, who I'm going to misquote and say, planning is everything, but the plan means nothing. So the action of planning and doing something and getting people talking is so important, even if what comes out of it needs to be adjusted and relentlessly readjusted.